Paranormal King Radio Network, bringing you the best paranormal hosts and guests. Bringing you the best paranormal shows and features. Playing the top musical artists from around the world. Paranormal King Radio Network. With the best paranormal hosts and guests. The best in paranormal shows and features. Playing the best musical artists from around the world. Paranormal King Radio Network. The paranormal will never be the same.
You are listening to Paranormalities and Ponderings with the C.A.S.P.I.R Paranormal team. Brought to you by the Paranormal King Radio Network and hosted by Frank Lee. Join us for the next hour as we discuss ghosts, spirits, hauntings, and other worldly phenomena that has yet to be explained in the hopes of finding answers. This show is meant to be a resource for those of you who, like us, seek to find answers to the unknown. We hope you find it informative and enjoy the show. And once again, thank you for listening.
And thanks for listening to Paranormalities and Ponderings. This week I'm your host, Frank Lee. And tonight I've got with me a special guest who is an equipment guru. I'm a big fan of his. And he is going to bring us a lot of information tonight. It's Mr. Mike St. Clair from C.A.S.P.I.R Paranormal. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
Doing great. How about yourself, man?
Doing great. I'm glad to have you on the show tonight.
It's good to be here.
Well, good. So, I was looking at some of your videos, and you've got some really awesome videos on your YouTube channel. There's a lot of information there. So anyone that isn't subscribed, I'm definitely going to recommend that they look there, because that's a wonderful resource. So,
thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. I seen the one video, which I know it's been out for a little while, but the title of it always catches my attention. The Ghost of Walmart. That was one that
yeah.
I love that one, because it's kind of an out of the box approach to it, to where you buy your paranormal equipment, but it makes such a good point, because so many people do spend so much extra money on paranormal equipment, and they're paying for that word, paranormal or ghost hunting.
That's absolutely right, man. I see that all the time. People just getting into it, they really don't know the equipment other than what they see on television. And I see a lot of people on eBay and places like that. They sell you're finding a lot of ghost hunting equipment, and regardless of what the device is, it's going to say ghost hunting or paranormal or ghost catcher or ghost detector or something like that, which gets people's attention. And you could be selling a toothpick and say it's for ghost hunting, and they'll give you however much you want for it. I see that a lot. Yeah.
Exactly, because there's, something you see is there's so few items that are specifically made for detecting ghosts.
That's right. When when paranormal investigation first came out, well, I can't say that because it's been around for years and years and years and years and years. You know, even long before we were even here on Earth. You and I, not everyone, of course.
Right.
But I apologize to you. I've got horrible ADD, and I'm going to do this on the show all night long. I'm just going to go off into to weird rants and jumping off the subject. So I just wanted to go ahead and forewarn you.
Oh, that's okay. Hey, we're all ears. That as much as you know, I'm listening to anything you got to say.
And I have lots to say.
Well, good deal, brother. You keep on talking.
All right, where were we at? What were we discussing there a second ago?
Well, just talking about the talking about the way that the label is itself about paranormal or ghost hunting, and how a lot of things that are used in the field aren't specifically designed for that, and how few items there actually are made.
Okay, I remember that now. Yeah, you know, back when I started doing it, there really was nothing specifically made for it. I started in 2008, and I believe the ghost meter may have been around then. It's the little EMF meter that's got the red light on the top and a little analog thing. That was one of the few pieces of equipment that you could buy that was specifically for ghost hunting or had the word ghost written on it. And what people don't understand is most of the stuff that we use is just stuff that lots of people already have lying around their house that they would have never even thought to use it as paranormal equipment, because, you know, a lot of people are getting their education on the television shows, and
Right.
the only things that they're seeing are the FLIR thermal imaging cameras that are going to cost thousands of dollars, and they're seeing the high tech, the $200 and $300 and more EMF meters, and they think, you know, that's what they got to go out and get,
Right.
and that's not the case at all.
Right, absolutely. I remember the very first EMF meter I had. I think at the time it cost me about $7 or $10, one of the two, and it was one of the ELF zone meters. And
Yes, sir. The white one with the button and the green and red LEDs on it.
bought it
Yeah.
bought it from a hardware store.
Did you really? Wow.
Certainly
Yeah,
did.
you don't too commonly find the EMF meters in stores. You know, I wouldn't be surprised now if some places were actually carrying them. I know I would always go to places like Lowe's and Home Depot and Harbor Freight and look for different things. And I mean, sometimes I'd come across something, you know, other times I wouldn't. I would even go to flea markets and yard sales, you know, and people had stuff that, of course, at the time they didn't know it was, you know, it was a piece of ghost hunting equipment.
Right.
And you know, whether it be like a compass, for instance, that's probably one of the first pieces of ghost hunting equipment, and it tells you which way north is, and therefore it's responsive to electromagnetic frequency.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and even if you want to get technical and spend even a little bit more money, even oscilloscopes that will tell you when you run into these frequencies, into these electromagnetic fields, and into these different frequencies, it measures them, calibrates them, distinguishes between man-made and naturally occurring. It's, you know, and you won't find one of those hardly on ghost hunting store.
No, no, not at all. I would imagine that would be a very useful device. Someone actually contacted me on YouTube and asked me about the oscilloscope, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. I had to look it up to see what it was. And he asked me where to, you know, if I knew where to buy or where to get the best price, and I honestly didn't know, because I mean, maybe I'd heard of it, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And they are actually affordable. Well, it depends on what you consider affordable and how
Right.
serious you are about, you know, the evidence you're collecting and actually investigating the paranormal. But he had a budget he was working with. I couldn't remember what it was, and I was able to find him a decent one. It was around $500, which is quite a great deal of money. But they have others out there that are just unaffordable for most people.
Right. And for an oscilloscope, that's a fair price. Of course,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
because they've came down so much. I can remember when I first started studying electronics, which this was back in the late '90s. A good oscilloscope was one that cost you about $2,000,
Yeah.
and it was huge. There was no such thing as a pocket oscope. Those did not exist at the time. So the probe wouldn't fit in your pocket, let alone the scope itself.
Yeah, that would get a little awkward on an investigation. I know we carry some big stuff around, but yeah, some of the early ones is definitely pretty big.
Right. Right. So, well, I've got to ask, what was it that got you interested in paranormal? Did you have any personal experience that maybe piqued your curiosity, or just
Look,
what led you to it?
that's a good question. A lot of people have had experiences when they were younger. When they were a kid or something happened to a family member or something happened to a friend, and they heard the story of it and sparked their interest. But for me, unfortunately, I never had anything like that happen. I remember back in the mid late '80s, late '80s mostly. I can't remember much further than that, but there was a show on, and it's still on the air, Unsolved Mysteries.
Hmm. Oh yes, I
And
loved that show.
it was one of the few places that you would hear about any type of paranormal activity, because definitely doesn't have the popularity back then that it does now.
Hmm.
But I would watch them, and I would love it. And every once in a while, there would be a TV special on about, not about paranormal investigating, but about just the paranormal in general.
Right.
And it was always something I look forward to. I look forward to it coming on television. And when I was in, uh, I can't remember, sixth grade. I was in sixth grade. That was a while ago. And we were offered electives, and one of the electives that we were offered was called Mysteries of the Unknown.
Hmm.
And it was, it talked about the Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot,
Hmm.
um, supernatural things like that. Not necessarily a whole lot about ghosts, but as we got into the class, we started talking more about that. And I mean, it seems to me like I've always had an interest for this, from a very young age. And I think what ultimately sparked my interest was, and I'm almost ashamed to say this, but I'll say it anyway. The television show Ghost Hunters.
Right.
The first season of that, we had just got cable, and it came on, and I was watching it, and I was like, wow, that is freaking awesome. People are actually out doing that. I didn't know that was something that people did. And I watched the locations they went to, and I thought to myself, that's so cool, but there is no way I would go into any of these places, because I was legitimately scared.
Right.
I didn't know. I don't have the knowledge that I do now back then, and it was just. I mean, it was exciting, but it was scary, to even think about that. And so I didn't really know at the time, that I was going to be doing this now.
Right.
But it was definitely, it's definitely the thing that ultimately made me want to be a paranormal investigator, was watching that show in particular.
Right. Well, a lot of people are inspired by those shows, and as much flack as Ghost Adventures catch, one thing that a lot of people forget is that Ghost Adventures was really started from an actual independently filmed documentary,
Yes, that's
and
right.
it was an excellent documentary. Um, Nick and Zach did an excellent job when they put it together, and a lot of people. Not too long ago, we actually posted a link to it on our Facebook page, and there were so many people that had never seen that before and didn't realize that
Yeah,
it all sprang from that. So
yeah, I remember that definitely.
but it inspired quite a few people in the field.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And so when you seen that, how did you kind of go about the transition from maybe saying, I would kind of like to do that, to getting involved with the team?
Well, um, yeah, it's funny you talk about that show in particular. My wife and I, we were both into the Ghost Hunter show, and we saw like an advertisement for the special, and apparently it had already aired before. It had already been on, and we didn't know about it. So I think it was about 2 hours long.
Hmm.
And we both watched it and sat down, and we were looking at the evidence and whatnot. And back then I didn't really know. Um, I had to look at everything and take it for what they said it was, because I wasn't there. I didn't know.
Right.
And I jumped on the internet and I started looking around, and I was like, I knew there was at least one paranormal team in my area. And I got on there and I started looking around, and there were two or three, in my city, and a whole mess of them, in surrounding cities. So I jumped online and started emailing people, just asking, telling them. At this point, I had already bought a couple pieces of equipment. I had a voice recorder, had an EMF meter, and I had one of the mini DV Sony night shot cameras.
Right.
And I had one of those, so as far as I knew, I was set. I was top of the line right there. That's all there was to it. And unfortunately, I didn't really get a response from anyone, which was kind of disheartening. But I was like, well, maybe I just need to start my own thing. And so that's what we did. My wife and I sat down and made up we put a little website on Google. It was just one of the free websites you could get. And I happened to be on this website called Big Orb. I think that was the name of it. I don't know if it's still around, but I was looking for meetups. They got these meetups where people, with different interests will meet up and talk about it.
Right.
And there was one that was, I think it might have been in Lynchburg. That's about 45 minutes, an hour from here. And I was going to go to that, and someone had an ad on there from this area. They were looking to be part of a team, or looking for people to join their team, whichever came first. And so I emailed him, and within an hour or so, he had sent me an email back. So I called him up and we started talking, and he had some equipment, I had some equipment. We put it together. We had a pretty good amount of stuff to start up with. And one weekend we set it up, and we went out to a cemetery, and we had our first investigation. And ever since then, man, it's been on.
So I have to ask, how did your first investigation go?
We caught about 300 EVPs. It was we learned a lot from that investigation. We didn't really catch anything there. It was a small cemetery, and it was. I think it was like a family cemetery, and he was in a class that for their final project they went to that cemetery and had an investigation. So he's like, this is where we should go. So we went out there, and we only stayed about 2 hours. I run two tapes on the whole investigation, and we had some things happen, or we thought things were happening. We had never done this before, so we were making the mistakes that everybody does when they first go out.
Mm-hmm.
And we got home, and I was so anxious to start listening to the video, to the audio, and watching the video. And honestly, the first time, I was almost scared to do it. I was like, what happens if there's something on here? I mean, I didn't know.
Right.
So we listened to it, and I know I had 2 sheets of notebook completely full of times where we were marking things we heard, and stuff that we thought could be paranormal. And we sat down, and he brought his audio over here, and we both sat down and started comparing things. Something that I had on my recorder that I thought was something, and he had a recorder running as well. So we synced those up, and immediately, right off the bat, we thought we had something. I mean, we had an EVP here, and it turned out it was him talking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we sync those pieces of audio up, and which is very, very important. I tell people always run. Every person that's there has to be running something that you can hear, whether it be a video camera with audio on it,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it be an audio recorder. Everybody should have something,
Right.
because when it comes down to verifying that you do have a piece of evidence, you've got to have that stuff to back it up.
Exactly.
And for some reason, we went in with that mentality that we've got to run as much stuff as we can. Everything we got to run, which wasn't much at the time. And because we did that, we learned quickly that you're going to catch 1,000 EVPs on every investigation, or at least you're going to think you are. You think you did.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went back and listened to it, and just about everything that we thought was something paranormal, we were able to write it off.
Right.
And you didn't really learn about this stuff on the show. Well, maybe I'll take that back. With Ghost Hunters, I know they did a lot of debunking in the first season.
Right.
And I learned that from watching the show. And so we started going and doing that. And after a while, I will be honest, after probably the first 10 investigations, it started getting a little boring. It was very discouraging, because I thought we were going to go in there and something was going to talk to us every time. But that wasn't the case at all. We went in so many times and didn't get anything.
Right, and that's something that so many people, they see the shows and then they get out there and spend the whole night just about and don't get anything.
Yeah, it's definitely discouraging. But the people that you hear say that, or we went on a bunch of investigations and we didn't get anything. You can almost take that for them being good investigators, because that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You don't catch stuff. And a lot of times I'll get on the internet and people will send me links on Facebook. Hey, check out our page or whatever. Check out our EVP, or they'll send it to me on YouTube, and I'll go in and listen to it. And sometimes I just don't know what it is. I mean, it could be something legitimately paranormal, but then a lot of times I'll listen to it, and then me not even being there, I can say, well, this isn't a voice. This sounds like somebody scooting their foot across the ground,
Right.
which sounds a lot like a voice, because the frequencies are so similar.
Right.
And that's what our brain does. Our brain, we have no control over our brain. It's so
Right.
strange.
Right, and actually, for some of the ladies investigating, I've found out that polyester pants make quite a good get out EVP.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I think probably my two favorites, and I call these upside down EVPs, and I did a video about that, and that's just, I don't know why I called it that. I just thought it would I thought it would be clever, and people would kick out of it. But the two most famous EVPs, Get Out and Help Me.
Right.
And I explain to people that when we're walking, we're outside, or it's cold outside. A lot of times, we investigate outside. It's cold, and you're walking around for an hour out there. You're breathing heavy, and one of your investigators breathes in, out, and next thing you know, you gotta get out EVP.
Right.
That was just one of your investigators. Or the exact opposite of that happens. They breathe out, and then they take a deep breath in.
Exactly.
You gotta help me. And I see a lot of those. And I try to tell people what I think of it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything for them. I don't want them to lead them on into thinking that they do have something. I'm gonna tell them from my experience. It sounds to me like it could be maybe an investigator breathing, or somebody sliding their foot across the ground. And unfortunately, the majority of the people, they don't want to hear that.
Right, but it's better to educate them than to humor them.
Absolutely. Especially a field like this where there's so much misinformation, and it's really, it's hard for, people like us. We go out and investigate. I'm not saying other people aren't serious about it, but we want to be as scientific as possible, and we want to, there's no way to have a perfect controlled experiment. There's no way to do it. There always going to be some type of variables,
Right.
but to make it as controlled as we can. And, a lot of people just want to run out there gung-ho, EMF meters flying, and, go out and get some evidence and come back home and put it on the internet. Hey, this is what we called on an investigation.
Right. Right. And so many people, the thing that I've seen so many times is people, they'll go out and spend hundreds, even thousands or more on equipment. And they have all this equipment, but you ask them, well, why does this equipment work that way? And they don't have a clue.
I think you're reading my mind here.
It's crazy, why are, and I ask them, well, why have you invested this money in this equipment if you don't understand how it operates or the science behind the principles that this equipment's based off, what it's detecting?
Right.
Would you buy a voltmeter if you don't know what a volt is?
That's right. That's right. And I see that with, of course, with EMF. I mean, that's one of the number one most heard of pieces of equipment for a paranormal investigator is an EMF meter. Well, what's an EMF? Well, it's something to do with magnets, or it's a frequency that ghosts put off when they walk by. Yeah, that's what it is, and that's what they know about it. That's their education on it. And I tell a lot of people, I'm like, you would be surprised how much information you can get by reading the instruction manual.
Right.
I always tell people to do that. I mean, I know it may sound like common sense, but a lot of times I'll get things, whether it be for something paranormal or for something else, and I'll look at it and I'll tinker with it a bit. And then no matter how much I know about it or think I know about it, I'm going to go in and read those instructions. And I may not read it cover to cover. I'll skim through and, look at points, look at questions that I may have or whatever. And then eventually you'll start figuring the things out on your own, and you can go back to your instruction manual. If you would like to, a lot of this equipment like EMF meters doesn't really come with instructions, especially ones you buy for paranormal investigation.
Right.
I know a lot of the more expensive ones do. Like, for instance, my favorite EMF meter is the tri-field natural, which it measures man-made EMF. Like anything you have in your home, your outlets, your television, your refrigerator, anything that puts out an EMF like that, and natural EMF.
Right. Gets into the geomagnetic spectrum.
Right. Which is your AC currents. Your DC is it's anything that is electrical that comes through your home. Your devices, even your cell phone. Your cell phone puts off an EMF. Anything with the speaker in it, because there's a magnet in it, it puts off the EMF. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
And they start getting all their phones and their other devices touching their EMF meter, and next thing you know, you're getting the EMF meters going off. I saw something that I haven't talked to anyone about this in a long time, and I think it would be great to do it on the show. There was a guy. I'm not going to say a team. It was a guy, and his sister was with him, and they were out investigating, cemeteries and whatnot, or locations where a car accident was, and they were using the K2 meter. And immediately the first thing that I saw was the guy's holding the K2 meter, and he's got his voice recorder right below it. Now that's a big, big no-no, especially if you're, trying to pick up on any EMF. If you've got something with a speaker in it, or something that has a current like that, then you're going to get false readings. Right. And I watched, and his sister would ask questions, and you would see him kind of with his index finger push up the voice recorder to where it would touch the EMF meter, and it would cause it to go off. So what the guy was doing was trying to trick his sister, and he did a very good job of it. He was able to control the EMF, make it go off anytime he wanted to. And so finally she says, well, let's set it down. Let's set it down on this rock here. And at that point, they set it down, and they weren't getting any more readings because there was nothing there to set it off. So she gets on the internet and puts this video up. And she had several other videos with EVPs, which were clearly not EVPs. And I contacted her about it because I could see that she was serious. You know, she really thought something was going on. And I told her, I was like, you know, I hate to say this, but your brother's trying to trick you. Mm-hmm. And she did not take to that very well at all. I mean, I was as polite as I could be about it, but he was. I don't know if he knew that this was going to go on the internet, but he was definitely trying to fool her, and he did. And she put the video on the internet, and the video's out there for everybody to see. And you would not believe how many comments there were saying, oh, how great it was, and how awesome the EVPs that they caught were. And I was like, that's the problem. That's the problem with the field. There's too much of that nonsense, whether it be someone purposely, you know, trying to trick you, or whether it's, you know, just be misinformation. And there's so much of that out there, it's hard for us to do what we do best, you know?
Right. And that's the bad thing, is the ones like that create such a negative stigma for us that the legitimate investigators have to overcome. And that's the purpose of shows like this, and, you know, that's what we're trying to do, is educate people so they can spot the frauds out there, so they can look at someone and say, hey, okay, you know, we know that's not the correct way it's done. Whether they're, you know, even if they're not an investigator, even if they're just interested in the paranormal, we want them to know. Right.
A lot of times it ruins it for them. It's kind of like magic. I do a second YouTube channel where I teach people how to do magic, and it kind of goes hand in hand with paranormal investigation. And people are like, "Well, what do you mean by that? I don't understand that." Well, the more that you know about what's not paranormal and what's fraudulent, the more information you have about that, the better off you're going to be in, you know, just proving your own stuff or being able to spot a fraud.
Right. Yep, I definitely agree. And something that I've seen as quite a theme in your videos is building your own equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, when I got involved in paranormal investigation, I didn't have a lot of money to go out and buy equipment. I looked around the house for stuff. You know, what kind of fits, you know, the investigation thing. I mean, what can I do with this stuff? And I looked, and we had I went on an investigation with one of our former team members, and he had these bells with him, you know, little holiday bells, and he hung them up, and I was thinking, what are you doing with that? And he was like, well, if there's something here and it's capable of manipulating an object, if it's capable of touching someone, or if it's capable of, you know, manifesting, then there's a good chance it may be able to move these bells. And if so, we're going to hear it. And I was like, that is genius. But what did that cost you, $1? And he was like, yeah, it cost me $1. A piece of paranormal investigation equipment for $1. No one, who would think of that, you know? And then things like trigger objects. That's what I've always called them. I don't know what the technical name for them is. I guess it's trigger items or trigger objects. You know, things that, you know, think if we were in the position of, you know, a ghost or a spirit or what have you, what would we like? What would we respond to? You know, I mean, if I was a ghost of, say, you know, passed away in the 80s, I'm not going to know what, you know, what all this stuff is, you know, what all these fancy gadgets are. You know, I may be scared of something like that, you know.
Absolutely.
But a Matchbox car, hey, I know what that is. You know, if it's a kid, something like that. For an adult, you know, I know what a deck of playing cards is. You know, I used to play cards, you know, And, things like that, just household items, a lot of times, candy, sometimes we'll take a pack of cigarettes. I do not condone smoking at all, but, we'll take a cigarette and a lighter and set it down on the table. You want to have a smoke, something like that. And just normal everyday items that we use.
Absolutely.
Those are paranormal investigation, items. I started thinking, I had a little bit of knowledge of electronics, nothing great. And I was like, hey, you remember those things that you used to have that you would stick on the telephone and you could record people's conversations? Which I knew that would pick up an EMS field, because that's how the telephones work. And I was like, what if we took that and I don't know, plug it into something, maybe plug it into a voice recorder,
Right.
and record that and see what happens, or plug it into a voice recorder and stick our headphones in it. And so I went out to Radio Shack and got one of those for, I'm going to say around $10 is what I paid for it. And I plugged it in, and sure enough, it worked. I mean, I was listening to EMS. I wasn't looking at it. I was listening to it through my headphones. And that's a piece of paranormal investigation equipment. You didn't have to build anything. You just had to plug something in. How easy does that get? And I started thinking, well, what if, at this point, I had already decided for myself that if a ghost, puts off any type of an EMF, it's not going to be an EMF from a wall outlet. It's going to be an EMF that maybe we carry as humans, static.
Right,
Static
something more
electricity.
naturally occurring.
And then I was like, well, wonder what it would take to detect that. And at that point, I think maybe the E-Pod, I think that's what it's called, and it's got the little antenna sticking out of it, and that picked up static. I was like, well, wonder how hard that would be to make. So I jumped online and started looking, and sure enough, I found a tutorial for it. And in the video, I give a link to the description, in the description, where to go to it shows you exactly what to buy. If you have any questions, you can refer to their instructions. And I went and I picked up the stuff to make it, and it was just a few dollars. The most expensive thing was the box to put it in.
All right.
And I had zero experience with soldering. When I decided to make that, I bought my first soldering gun. Never used one before, and needless to say, I was quite messy with it, but it was simple. It took little of nothing to put it together, and so I tested it out, and I would walk by it and I wouldn't set it off, and I was like, well, if this is hooked up right, it should work, and it didn't work because it was the transistor that I used was supposed to pick up a negative charge. And whatever I was carrying was not that.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I took a piece of plastic. It was from a pack of chewing gum or a pack of cigarettes. I can't remember what it was, but I pulled that off and created a charge like you learned in elementary school by rubbing a balloon on your head. And I moved that piece of plastic up to it, and sure enough, man, that thing went off. I mean, the light reacted, and I was like, holy crap, man, I just made a piece of equipment for like a couple dollars.
Exactly.
And it was, I got most of the stuff at Radio Shack, and I was like, well, this picks up a negative charge. What could I do to pick up a positive charge? And so I found that there's another transistor for that. So I was like, awesome. So I went online, and I found the transistor there because I couldn't find them at Radio Shack. They didn't have them. And I got that transistor and hooked the two together. And sure enough, when a negative charge walks by or comes in contact, the green light gets bright and the red light gets dim. So they react opposite. And then I was like, wait a minute. If it works like that, then you shouldn't need but one. So I tinkered with the one, and sure enough, when it was a negative charge, that light would get bright. When it was a positive charge, the light would get dim. And I was like, well, there you go. And it was so simple, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, wait a minute, they're selling these things for $100, and I just made it for pennies.
Right.
I mean, mine didn't look as cool, but it did the exact same thing. And I think when I made that, that's when I really decided that the stuff that people are getting is they're just throwing money around because they don't know what they need to get. You can make this crap.
Exactly. Exactly. And to someone that maybe isn't, maybe they aren't mechanically inclined or aren't quite that handy, for them to try to build something like that, just the average person, how hard would you say it is for them?
Well, considering I had no experience doing anything like that, actually soldering and whatnot, pretty much, I think my wife could probably do it, and she knows nothing about anything on the subject. She knows a lot about the paranormal because of me, but she wouldn't have the first clue on how to build that. And if you had the proper instructions, it's definitely doable by anyone. I think it's very simple.
Absolutely. So, and that reminds me of another good question. If someone wanted to research building some of these, is there a good site that you would recommend, or a good place to find instructions for some of this equipment?
Well, of course, I show how to build a couple of them. You can check those out on my channel. It's at Springfreak79 on YouTube. How to be a ghost hunter is the title of it. I've got a few things there, but I can't really think of a specific website. But there are lots of resources out there. If you type in something like how to make ghost hunting equipment, of course my videos will probably pop up. But you're also going to find links to other people that have figured out, I can use these little Radio Shack projects as ghost hunting equipment.
Right.
And a lot of people have done their own tutorials showing how to do it, probably more in depth than mine. And then you can easily go and follow those instructions. And I believe that, I don't know if they have them there now, but Radio Shack used to have a motion sensor. That's a piece of paranormal investigation equipment. A motion sensor, something goes by it, something blocks the light, and then it's going to set it off. They had a little pamphlet there showing you how to build that. It was a light detector. And what are spirits? In my opinion, they're energy. That's what it is. What kind of energy? Well, we really don't know. I mean, it could be light energy. It could be, an electric type energy. We're really not sure. But I believe if you get these pieces of equipment like that, things that detect fluctuations in lighting, things that if a solid object passes it, or something that's capable of blocking out enough light, right. That can be used. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can make for pennies, literally. Here's one. You guys are actually getting the first word of this. I haven't done the video yet. I've been wanting to do it for so long, and I keep getting tied up with other things. But a piece of paranormal investigation equipment that almost everybody has around their house. That is a fan. A little desk fan. Well, what's a desk fan going to do? Well, I'm glad you asked. A desk fan is a major source of EMF. I don't know if EMF pumps work. I say there's a good chance that they could. And an EMF pump is something that pumps out EMF. And
absolutely, because of the coil in it.
That's right. You put a EMF meter up to a fan. And I mean, it could go through the roof. We had one. We were at a place called Major Graham's Mansion. It's here in Virginia, and we were having a little ghost hunting 101 thing. We were teaching some new investigators and whatnot, and there happened to be a fan sitting there. And I was like, "Hey guys, watch this." So we took over the Mel meter, which measures really really high EMF, and I believe we topped it out like 36,000 Gauss or milligauss.
Wow.
Which is like a ridiculous amount. And I was like, people that have these things next to their bed, I sleep with a fan, just a couple feet away from my bed. I'm firing my brain with EMF.
Right. I mean, but that's awesome. I mean, and that's something like you mentioned that you would never think of.
Oh, and to take that one step further, not only is it an EMF meter, but it's also a white noise generator.
I
If a white noise generator is something that you want to use, we don't use them. I have my own theories about that, but it's two pieces of equipment in one, and you can pick it up at, at the dollar store probably.
right. Yeah, $10. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's definitely a brilliant idea.
And we actually use those on investigations. We used a fan, set it up in the corner of the room, and went over next to it, started asking questions. And we've got some equipment here. If it's something that you can use to maybe to do something, feel free to use it. Do whatever you want. And we've never had anything happen because of running it, but that's not to say it can't.
Right. Right. And it's definitely you see those EMF pumps that they advertise they sell for $40-$50 a pop. Why not buy a $10 fan? especially
Right.
especially since there's no, as far as EMF pumps prove, it's all completely theoretical. There's no
Right.
evidence to support that claim. It's complete speculation.
That's exactly right. And why put all that money out on something that you don't even know if it's going to work? EMF meters, they pick up EMF. I know that works. I know that's scientific. Do ghosts put off EMF? I don't know. But I know what that device does. It picks up EMF, and if there's an EMF there, it's going to pick it up. The the what the EMF pump. I don't know if that, I mean I know it puts out an EMF, but I mean is that something we're going to be able to use? Do we know? No, we don't. But I definitely encourage people to experiment because this stuff that we don't understand now, maybe one day we'll understand it and it'll be common knowledge to people because of us.
Right. So, have you found maybe any dual purpose items to help with video or with still photography?
Um, let's see. No, not really. Um, here's one thing that a lot of people may not know. Um, the night vision camcorders. Unfortunately, now to get a Sony, which was they're the ones that come out with the night shot. That's what everybody was using on the shows.
Hmm.
To to get a Sony to go in the store and buy one with night shot, it's not going to happen. You can't get those anymore. They don't make them anymore. Well, you have to go online or go to a pawn shop. I tell people go to pawn shops, man. I've found so many cameras, night vision cameras at pawn shops that nobody wanted because they're obsolete. Not for us. We use them.
Right. They're awesome, and
Yeah.
and you'll pay when you do find them used. You're going to pay just as much for those used as you will for a new one.
We I went down to a pawn shop that's not even a mile from our house. I stop in there every once in a while, and they had, because at this point I didn't own a high definition camera because the only ones I found were $1,000, $1,500. That I couldn't afford that. That was way out of my price range. So I walked in one day and looked, and I was like, "Oh crap! There's a Sony Night Shot camera, and it's a hard disk one." I wanted a hard disk because all I had at that point was a mini DV, and I wanted to be able to store more information on there. And I went over and looked at it, and I was like, "Oh crap! Yeah, there we go." And I think they had $135 on it, and I was like, "Can I check out that camera?" And they're like, "Sure." And they pulled it out, and I looked at it. Come to find out, it was a high definition Sony Night Shot camera,
Hmm.
40 gig night shot camera, high definition for $135. And I was like, that's got to be a misprint on the price or something. It can't be right. And I went on and started looking online. Apparently, I had been looking for the wrong models. See, I didn't at that point. There was no list to look at and find ghost hunting cameras because you had to do the research on your own.
Right.
And finally, I found out which models actually had it. And you'd be surprised. I saw one go on eBay for less than $100 for a high definition night shot camera. And once you've got the camera, it's great, but the little light on it, it doesn't do much of anything. Unless you're in a really small room, you're not going to see anything. So I was like, I got to get an infrared light. But again, I don't have the money to get that. How can I make money?
Right.
And if you go on YouTube now, there are a lot of tutorials showing how to build your little LED illuminators for 10, 15 bucks. Things like that. There are also I actually have one showing how to modify an infrared light, and the light itself, it was about $30. It was a decent price. It was super bright, extremely bright. The only problem was it took 3 hours to charge and it only ran for 45 minutes.
Oh no.
So if you plan on doing an investigation, you're going to need 5 or 6 of those at $30 a pop. That adds up.
Right.
So I figured out a way to go in and actually modify it to where it runs off a rechargeable battery. So that's what I did. And rather than having to buy a bunch of lights, I was just switching my batteries out every hour and a half or so.
So that's good information.
Saved a lot of money, yeah.
And those Sony night shot cameras, I will say this to anyone listening. I remember when I first started those. Yes, if you see those, grab them. Those are awesome.
Yep, those are definitely good. Bell and Howell also has a fairly popular one. And I had so many people calling me. They were like, "Hey, Mike, I picked up the Bell and Howell such and such model." And they told me they got it for like $200 and it had all this memory on it. I was like, wow, that's a heck of a deal. And they're like, but my illuminator doesn't pick it up. I'll run my IR light and you can't see anything. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. Come to find out, those work on deep infrared. And the Sony night shots, they work on infrared and near infrared. So it doesn't have to be infrared for it to pick it up. It's just got to be near infrared. Well, the Bell and Howells were deep infrared, and they weren't seeing them because the light frequency wasn't right. And there are a lot of people complaining about it because they didn't work, and people were sending them back, and they just didn't do the research.
Right.
But you can. They're fairly easy to modify. If you wanted to take one of your old camcorders and modify it. I don't have a tutorial for it, but there are some online showing how to make a regular camera see night vision. The only step back to that is that's all you're going to see. Once you modify it, that's it. You can't go back to recording, your home videos of your kids running around because the camera's been modified and it's not going to work anymore. Right. But I know a lot of people who have done that, and you can even buy the cameras like that modified, that have already been modified. Of course, you're not going to get any type of warranty on them because, once you take the camera apart and start cutting pieces out, you pretty much void the warranty on that.
Right. Well, like one of my electronics instructors told me years ago, once you let the smoke out of something, you can't put it back in there. It never goes back in.
Yep, that's right.
So anyway, we're getting close to the end of the show. So tell me about some of the things that you've got going on. I hear you've got a new project that's in the works now. That's a first for your team.
Yeah, we're going to be doing an event November 15th. It's going to be at a place called St. Albans Sanatorium. Oh, wow. And it's in Radford. It's in Radford, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And I've been there many times. There's definitely activity there. I've experienced some things there that I've never experienced anywhere else. But on the 15th, we're going to be doing an event. It's going to be a Ghost Hunting 101 seminar. I'll be speaking, and some other members of my team will be speaking. We're going to cover many different aspects of the paranormal. I'm going to talk some about equipment and, how to conduct the investigation, what you need to do. And some other members are going to touch on some other aspects of investigating and being a paranormal investigator. And once that is complete, we're going to go into a full-blown investigation.
Oh, wow.
We're going to split up in several groups. People will be investigating with our team. We'll have, of course, we'll have all of our equipment with us because a lot of people, want to investigate and they don't have their own equipment. And, maybe they want to go with somebody who does or somebody who has, that experience. Well, that's what we're going to be offering. So they can come in and they'll have a chance to use the equipment. I know a lot of people will bring their own, and we encourage that if they got it. And of course, you're going to get a T-shirt. We're going to offer some other bonus things. We're going to be giving out a flashlight. It'll be our logo flashlight.
That'll be cool.
And of course, we'll be serving food as well, and we'll have some bonus activities set up. People will be able to get their pictures taken and whatnot, and we're going to be selling some VIP tickets as well. And with those VIP tickets, you're going to get a couple extra hours of investigation, and we are personally going to film. We're going to run our high definition cameras and our Zoom voice recorders, which are 4-channel voice recorders, and we're going to be recording those and putting a DVD together that they're going to get to take home.
Oh, wow.
Of their entire investigation. So they're not going to have to worry about filming somebody. They're going to be there. They're going to be getting filmed.
So this is going to be quite an undertaking. That's awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, a good number of people are going to come out, and we're going to get to teach them, the do's and don'ts. And then after that, they're going to get to go in and get some hands-on experience. So it should be a lot of fun. You can go to our website, BlackParanormal.com. We got all the ticket information there, and any information that you need to know. Of course, you can always email the team and ask us any questions. You'll be able to access that from Facebook as well. And just go to Viper Paranormal on Facebook. And we've got a couple different pages there. And please feel free to give us a like. And if you have your own paranormal team, then shoot us an email and we'll come check out your page as well. So
definitely. And also, what was your email, or excuse me, not your email, but your YouTube channel as well, so they can subscribe to the videos that you post, because you put such great information out there.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that, man. It's ScreenFreak79. That's my username. If you go to YouTube and type in "How to Be a Ghost Hunter," it's going to take you right there. That's the name of the channel, How to Be a Ghost Hunter, ScreenFreak79, and you're going to have access to, right now it's about 140, 150 videos. We do post some evidence up there, so you will get to see some evidence. We give people the opportunity to get in on the free software. There's a lot of free analysis software out there that people don't know about. You can get those, and then you'll have access to tutorials showing how to use this, how to use your software that you're going to get absolutely free. I mean, it doesn't get any better than free.
Right. That's the best price ever. And we definitely appreciate all the knowledge that you share and all the information. You got some awesome stuff out there. So, and I certainly appreciate you being on the show. It's been great, and hopefully I can get you back on the show again.
Absolutely, man. I'm always game. Just let me know and we'll set it up.
Okay, that sounds awesome, because I've really enjoyed it. I've learned quite a bit myself. There's so many things that you've brought up that you just never think about. So, and I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it.
There's a lot of stuff to it that you would never think.
Right. So I guess the biggest thing, if they, the biggest thing to really think about is think outside the box and use common sense. So.
Common sense. That's the big thing right there. Common sense.
Right. So if you were going to leave everyone with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, absolutely. Learn as much as you can from as many people as you can, but take into consideration who you're learning from, so you know what you should believe, and just use your best judgment. The easiest explanation is usually the correct explanation, and try not to overthink things when you're in the field and when you're analyzing.
Great advice. Well, I thank you so much, Mike, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Well, me too. Well, we're out of time here, but I'm definitely going to have you back, because that's just been barely enough time to even scratch what all I'd like to cover.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you for listening to Paranormalities and Ponderings with the C.A.S.P.I.R Paranormal team, brought to you by the Paranormal King Radio Network. We hope you enjoyed the show, and will tune in again next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please be safe as you're out there, especially if you're investigating the paranormal. Take care, have a good night, and happy huntings. Thank you again from the C.A.S.P.I.R Paranormal.